Okay, continuing our series of work session, and Councillor Belcott, I see you're here. I'm not sure when you got here, but I'm glad you're here. So let's get our update on the 2025 Comprehensive Plan update. Oliver?
Yes, it's almost noon, but good morning, councillors. For the record, Oliver Ojako, and with me this morning is Jose Alvarez, who's Land Use Program Manager. I will be going over this discussion with you, and we are going to be focusing on the Vancouver unincorporated urban growth area, and I believe the council asked for this work session based on the letter submitted by the city of Vancouver and some of the issues that they raised. So broadly speaking, this is the reason why we are having this work session. But let me quickly go over the purpose of today's work session. Next slide. So, councillors, this is an overview of our discussion with you. We are going to just give you a very quick background, focusing on previous decisions that the council have made. We'll get into the allocation methodology. This will refresh your mind on how we went about the allocation of the population, housing, and employment based on the decision that the council have made. And then we'll focus on the unincorporated Vancouver UGA and share with you again the rationale for some of the proposals that led us to including some expansion of some areas in the unincorporated Vancouver UGA. Then we'll talk briefly about next steps. Let's go to the next slide. Councillors, as is customary now in my shop, we come before you each time sharing with you the 4 phases of the project schedule, if you will. We started this process way early in 2023. We started with first establishing a public participation and work scope of work, and the council approved that. So if you look at this slide here, you can see the general 4 phases of this project, starting with that project initiation, shaping of the plan, review and refinement of the plan, and then the adoption process. All the checkmark areas, things that we have completed. If you go to the third phase there, which is review and refinement, we have issued the draft environmental impact study, which the comment will close at the end of this month, 5 p.m. on November 30th. And we just completed a work session on the agricultural land study. What we haven't checked off here are the things that are remaining in that review and refinement before we move into the adoption process. And we have amended this phase to include that we are not going to meet our statutory deadline, that if we stay on track, we will complete this by June 2nd. And I'm not going to go into details depending on what happens going forward. Let's go to the next slide. So councillors, for those that are new, this is the decisions that have been made to date. As I indicated, beginning with the council approval of the public participation plan and the preliminary scope of work that was adopted after a hearing on March 21st, 2023. Then the council chose the population to plan for, the 718,154 new folks that will move here. This is the total at the end of 2045. So if you subtract our base year, which was the 2023 is what we were using, if you subtract the estimated county population from that time frame, the difference will be what we will be planning for. That hearing was on May 2nd, 2023. The council also adopted a population, not a population, but employment projection to 2045. You can see the number here of what the total non-farm employment job will be in Clark County by 2045. This total number, 269, doesn't subtract what the current or what from the base. If you subtract that, which we are going to show you later, we are really going to be planning for something close to a little bit over 88,000 new job from now until 2045. That hearing was adopted. This employment projection was adopted after the hearing on August 8, again 2023. Then we had a series of meetings and discussion with our local jurisdiction that led to the approval by council, the population and employment allocation. That was May 7th, 2024. We came to the council sharing all the alternatives or land use proposal that each of the local jurisdictions adopted. We went over the rationale for the alternative 2 and alternative 3 for the unincorporated Vancouver UGA. So we will refresh your mind on that. The council directed the alternative that has been studied in the DEIS. That decision was made on April 8, 2025. So with that, let me then turn this over to Jose, who will be going over the county allocation, the housing allocation, and then we get into the Vancouver UGA and how we arrive at what is the purpose of this work session today. Jose, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Albert. Good morning, Council. So just going to give you some, again, overview of some of the decisions that are made in more detail. This is the countywide population total that the council selected, the 718,154 population 2045. The difference between what the April 1, 2023 number, essentially, and the difference there is 190,000, with about 5% of that going to the rural area and the remaining 95% to the urban area. So 181,000 folks that we're planning for over the next 20 years in the urban growth areas. This is a sort of estimate of the population and allocation by urban growth area. The April 1 figures broken out by the UGAs, and then the projected allocation of those 181,000 through the different jurisdictions. And you can see that the unincorporated Vancouver UGA and the city of Vancouver make up the mass bulk of that growth. It's about 130,000, almost 140,000 out of the 181. In terms of housing allocation, this is where Department of Commerce developed a new tool, the Housing for All planning tool, that required local counties to account for and plan for and provide for housing at the different income bands. And you'll see that those range from the extremely low income, the 0-30%, to above 120%. And we'll show a breakout of this and what we consider to be market rate housing. And there's some of the assumptions that went into the tool that was developed by Commerce. They included a vacancy rate and a household size that's much smaller than what we've experienced over time. So the amount of housing needed is beyond what we would normally have projected based on some of these inputs that are in this tool, things that we haven't used in the past. But and again, the other, there's also requirement for emergency housing and permanent supportive housing that we need to account for. This is what the housing needs, the allocation tool. There's several spreadsheets, but essentially this, you put in the county, the projection year and the population target, and it estimates that under table 2, that total future housing need 2045. And so that's the 309,000 units that the tool estimates we'll need by 2045 to accommodate that population growth. And then it uses as a baseline the existing housing supply as of 2020. So it subtracts that out and gets a projection of 115,705 new housing units needed in that period. In a subsequent slide, I'll show you that we've accounted for the additional 3 years of growth that occurred between 2020 and 2023 to, so that 115,000 will be reduced to about 103,000. Yep. So this shows the 397,000 2045 total. The 100, I think we added about 12,000 housing units in that 3-year period. So roughly 206,000. So the need is now 103,698. And then you can see in the second, the top line, the income bands and the dollar figures for those. So that first column there, the 33,850 would represent the 30% of area median income as of 2023. And these are figures provided by the Department of Housing and Urban Development that that's used for these. That's where we get the estimates of the area median income.
I have a
Sure.
question.
Mhm.
I recall when we were looking at the allocations to the cities and the income bands that Camas didn't follow the same formula. I'm not remembering this totally, but
Yep.
what impact did that have on the unincorporated urban area? Because I think we absorbed whatever it was
Yes.
that they weren't
Yes.
taking. And I don't know if that's population numbers or just some of the population within those income bands. What was the impact?
I don't have the specific number. We were looking at a couple different formulas, and I think we ended up with a 75-25 split for Camas, and then the county unincorporated area took the difference of that, and so we absorbed that additional housing. And I can get the specific.
Right. And
number
what was
for you.
it for the other cities?
I think we did the same.
75-25?
Yes, and I can.
Oh, so it was,
I'm trying to
I
remember
thought
if
there was
it's
an exception made for Camas. I just don't remember the specifics.
Yeah, it required, and I don't know if there was a difference in Camas and then it was split 75-25. I'd have to get you that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can get that to you.
Thank you. And just what the impact is
Yeah.
then for the unincorporated urban area.
Chair,
Yes.
Oliver or Jose, has the county ever conducted a housing needs analysis? Now, I'm not asking about the affordability level or a need based on affordability, but based on what type of housing we will need over the next 45 years. So if we need apartments, single family, detached, multi-generational, executive housing, et cetera. Have we ever conducted anything like that to better understand what and as families continue to shrink, right? You know, less and less people, less and less families are having children. Do we need bigger houses, smaller? I'm just kind of curious if we've ever done that.
So, I think it was in 2020 as part of the housing option study. There was a needs assessment done for the county. I'm not sure if it gets into that level of detail, but it's based on sort of projected population growth. Typically, um, it, a lot of what we have is based on what our existing land supply is. Um, what's reflected in our vacant buildable lands model, and what our existing zoning shows for capacity. And that's one of the changes in terms of these new requirements from the state that has us look at these income bands in a way that we hadn't done previously. Um, and so, I'll show you in a moment that, when we were looking at this, overall, we had enough housing capacity in total to accommodate the population growth that was allocated to the county. But what we didn't have is the right mixture. So in these, you're seeing, and I'll show you that, 80+% is typically market rate housing. And that's the bulk of the sort of single family zone
Mhm.
that we have. Anything 50% or below is generally not going to be provided by the market,
Mhm.
and some form of subsidy or something to produce that housing. And that's where you're seeing the bulk of the need is. It's almost 52%, I think, of the need for the next 20 years is in that lower income bracket.
Well, yeah, and I think that touches on affordability, right? And
Mhm.
I mean, regardless of family household size, the affordability is a big component that's absolutely needed. I
Mhm.
guess what I'm asking for is, specific housing type. Household dynamics are changing, right? There are
Mhm.
more and more, less and less children, more and more single folks living alone, and so we can build housing, but if we're not building the appropriate type of housing, then are we doing the right thing to fill the needs of the community? So based on housing type, does that make sense?
Yes.
And I only ask because, a few years ago, I said on the planning commission, the city of Hillsborough, and the city did a housing needs analysis. And one of the things that came out of it was a lot more attached family single homes and executive housing, right? The city of Hillsborough was
Mhm.
not building executive housing.
Mhm.
And so I'd be curious. I'm not suggesting we we conduct that study anytime soon, but I think that's something that as we focus on housing and the needs of this community over the next 20 years, because we're looking at 103,000 units. But what does that look like, right? What are the housing types look like over the next 20 years, and trying to fill that gap of 104,000 units. So
Yeah, and I think one of the tools, one of the assumptions that was used by the Department of Commerce in their projections for those number of units was a household size of about 2.44 in 2045, which is we're currently at about 2.66, 2.67, and when the 94 plan was done, we were looking, I think, at we were using 2.33, and that never materialized. So we had more land for more housing based on that. And then the change from 2.69 to 2.44 is pretty significant. It makes a big difference in the amount of housing that's needed. Um, and to your point about household size, historically, Clark County has gotten a lot of people moving from the Oregon side of the border here for schools. And so couples come and move and then start their families here. And that's typically why we've had the larger household size. There's also, a lot of existing single family homes that, with the aging of the baby boomer generation, you're going to have a lot of those types of housings that's going to be available. So what the mix is for the future is really difficult, but based on the state's direction to us, based on that lower income, it's going to dictate that we build more apartments, essentially, is what it comes down to.
Thank you. And then just really quick, I read somewhere over the weekend, I think it might have been the Atlantic, that said that this country is increasingly becoming a country of renters, right? Because of the affordability factor, people cannot afford houses. And then to your point, Portland's closing down schools because they don't have enough children to fill their schools. Well, our enrollments are going up at BPS and Evergreen. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, there's definitely some
Sure.
cyclical.
I would just add to that is something I've been saying this entire process is, and it's not the fault of our staff. It's the way that the GMA is written and the laws, especially some of the newer things, is that we're really reacting to what they're requiring rather than fundamentally looking at what our needs are and going from there. It's a bit of a frustration for me.
I'm hearing support for another study.
Councilors, we are, as Jose indicated, as part of the HOSAP study, a housing need analysis was done. And as a result of that, there have been some changes made to our single family zone, allowing for a variety of housing type. And we are now beginning to look at the medium and urban high density category to see if additional changes can be made. Yes, Councillor Young, we have no choice. We have to provide the land and the opportunity for this type of housing to come online. If we don't, the bill that passed that requires counties to submit a housing element to Commerce to approve, although it came back to say because there was some opposition through the Washington Association of Counties that Commerce doesn't have the authority to what will happen if decision from Commerce is challenged, who would defend that? So for those reasons, I don't think we are going to be submitting our housing element to Commerce, but I think we're going to do a housing element that is defensible, and that is what we have been working on. I'm in full support of additional study, but we have looked at what our housing need will be and using that as the stepping stone to make some of the changes that we are making through the housing studies. So that is my 2 cents to that. Jose mentioned subsidies. Yes, we will come to council to make certain hard decision on because if our policy in the housing, I've said this all the time, if we said that to bring some of this multifamily or the 50 to 80 AMI possibility of that happening, that it will require some subsidy or incentives, we have to show where the funding of that is going to come from. So it is further discussion that we are going to be having with council to make sure that we are putting the funding sources of that to make that a possibility. These are the facts, these are the numbers. We're not necessarily planning by numbers, but we have to make this number work and then provide the opportunity for this to happen. Totally, you have heard that the entire state of Washington needs 1 million housing units in the next 20 years. The population that the council chose is what is driving this number. When we just didn't generate it out of the thin air. It is that population that when you feed it into the tool, it gives you your share of that 1 million. So that's where we are, and we have to plan for it.
Thank you, Oliver.
Okay, so again, this is the projected housing units by UGA and income band, and this is where you can see the percentages for each a total of how many of those income bands. So starting at the far right, the greater than 120% countywide makes up about 31% of the total housing. The 100 to 120% is about 9%, and then on down. And then the next slide, I will show you, it sort of creates a composite. So you can see that the less than 80% of AMI makes up about 52% of the total housing units needed. Between 80 and 120 is about 17%, and then the greater than 120 is 31%. So overall, you're needing a little bit more housing in that lower than 80%. And there could be some market rate housing there at the at that 50 to 80%, but not a lot. And then in terms of employment, this was the total number of jobs that were needed was about 269,045. Can't see that here, but that works out to about 88,100 new jobs. That's 65,000 in the UGAs, and then there are several categories there that aren't included. This is based on the vacant buildable lands model. Our model excludes government, and so that's the 8,600 that would happen on publicly owned land. Any additional employees, schools, counties, cities, wouldn't be accounted for because there's no, the model excludes that land. We had the construction where it's not a land dependent, where you're building housing. So there was a percentage of that was included, and then percentage for the rural was about 4,400, 5% of the total. And then the work from home, we assumed about 4%. And this was based on some information we got from Scott Bailey, but it is very conservative on the work from home assumption. Question?
I do have a question. I'm trying to remember previous decisions, and I recall that our jobs number was more aggressive than we've ever been able to achieve in the past. The ratio of like population to jobs. Can you help me out with that?
I think we try to target 1-to-1, one job for household is the,
It's one per household, right?
yeah.
But we've never, in past planning periods, we've never achieved that. What have we been able to achieve? Not to say the past is predictive of the future, but maybe it's an indicator.
It's like 0.1 to 0.8, just 0.8. We're not close to the 1-to-1 ratio, but 0.8 is what I recall coming from employment security, but the council made the goal of 1-to-1 ratio. So that's what the assumption is built in, and that's what we're aspiring to. So whether we'll meet that in the next 20 years, we'll be monitoring and seeing how well we're doing.
Right. I think we were feeling optimistic and hopeful, but it's good to know it is an aggressive goal.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay. So the Vancouver UGA proposal, as I mentioned, when in coming up with the alternative to accommodate the population employment that was allocated to the Vancouver urban growth area, we're very close on both employment and housing. As I mentioned, the housing, we overall had enough land to accommodate the housing, but not in the types of housing. So with that sub 80% and the need for additional multifamily zone property, we needed to make changes to increase the areas where we could have multifamily. And then in doing so, we looked at upzoning certain areas. So we were looking at where there was existing multifamily along Highway 99, Hazeldale. One of the things we noted was that our zoning allows for housing in that Highway 99 sub-area plan, but our model never was amended to account for that. And so it just assumed that all of that area in Highway 99 would be commercial. And so all of the, the land area wouldn't have any housing. So when in the last couple of years, we're starting to see some housing happen and develop in that corridor. And so what we wanted to do was reflect that change. And so we made an assumption in the model that we would get some housing in that Highway 99 corridor. Typically, we haven't seen sort of an integrated mixed use where you have commercial on one floor and housing above it. It's been more sort of a horizontal kind of mixed use. And so in making that change to the Highway 99 area to account for some of that housing, we reduced the portion that would be dedicated to employment. So overall, that reduced our jobs capacity by about 460 jobs. The other area we looked at was our mixed use zones, where our model assumed that 60% of mixed use property would be developed residentially and 40% would be developed commercially. Our code allows for an 80-20 split, and that's pretty much what we were seeing. 80% residential, 20% commercial. What we further were observing was that the residential was built out. There would be a commercial pad that was laid out, but no commercial development. And so we had like several requests as part of the comp plan update. And in speaking to some of the development folks in Deeb, they were looking at wanting to reduce that split from that 80-20 to 90-10. And so in doing that, going from a 60-40 split to a 90-10 split, that reduced, again, our employment capacity by a little over 1,000 jobs, about 1,051.
Chair, just real quick question on that. So this is actually, I think I never caught this before, but so part of our comp plan update is actually changing the zone of the area on Highway 99, because is it not zoned currently to 80-20?
No, it's not the zoning.
It's not the zoning.
So in Highway 99, when we did the Highway 99
Overlay.
sub-area plan, it all of the areas are still zoned commercial, but the overlay allows for a mixture of housing in those commercial
It
areas.
allows 90-10, 80-20.
Well, there's no limit.
Oh, okay.
And so Highway 99 is a little bit different than our mixed use zones. So Highway 99,
So you
there's no,
can currently go 100% residential without a commercial requirement?
I think so, in some of the areas.
Okay.
And so, but the model didn't include any capacity for residential.
Okay. So
And-
we don't have to change the zoning.
No.
All you did was adjust the model to reflect what we're currently
Correct.
seeing
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Chair.
Yes.
Have you seen any interest in more housing or mixed use along Corridor 99, specifically because over the next couple of years, the Vine, this north-south
Yes.
Vine will be running
Correct.
along that corridor,
Yes.
which could stimulate transit-oriented development. So I guess my question is, has there been any interest in areas along that corridor for mixed use and high-density housing?
So all I can say is that I know that there have been some projects proposed. A couple of are built out. There's one that's it's all housing with no commercial. I know VHA has had some projects in the area. So there's a level of interest. I don't know specifically about a mixed use where, for whatever reason, that has proved to be difficult here. But that is one of the reasons that we sort of wanted to take a look at this area, because as you rightly mentioned, the Vine is coming, and it just seems like it would be a natural to have or to anticipate more of that type of development happening in that area. But I think to remember that I don't think we assumed that a lot of the commercial would remain in the area, and that maybe, I don't know, 20 to 30% would develop residentially. And that's what's part of the estimates currently.
As a county, are we doing anything to draw attention to the area? Like, for example, I know that there's some projects that are happening along 99, like sidewalk improvements, for example. Are we doing anything like any type of beautification projects, to be able to draw, attention, to this area so that we can get developers to really focus on potentially building more housing or mixed use housing?
Yep. I think that was the intent of the Highway 99 sub-area plan. That's over 10 years old now, at least. And the intent was to do some road improvements to sort of change the nature of that physically so that it would be attractive to development.
Thank you.
I would, if there's no objection, invite Brian Snodgrass to come up and join in this discussion, because this is their growth boundary, and I can see you're shifting around a bit in your chair. So if there's no objection,
Not at all.
we invite Brian to come up, and you can sit right up here. Thank you, and thank you for coming. And I don't know if the other counselors have had a chance to read your letter, but it addresses this issue and the DEIS as well. So I don't know, have you completed your?
No, I'll get to, I'll let Brian chime in a minute, but the other, there's another area in Fairgrounds area that's currently zoned mixed use. There was a site-specific request to change that from mixed use to, I think, a low dense or medium multifamily. And talking to the consultant that was working on that, they gave us some information that the property is constrained, and it would be very difficult to get a commercial component of mixed use on that property. So I think that was one property where we, in alternative 2, we didn't want to lose the higher density capacity, because mixed use allows you to go between 12 and 43 units. So in that alternative 2, we kept that at 45 units, an acre. And so we lost jobs because we took the mixed use component away from that. And so that's not, so that's reflecting another shortage of about 200 jobs from that change in alternative 2. So that overall, those changes led to a deficit of 1,500 jobs.
Right.
And that's what precipitated the need to look at to expand the Vancouver UGA to accommodate those
I
those
do
jobs.
think we missed some opportunities on 179th for jobs. But
Yeah.
decision made.
Um, so so these are the areas that we looked, some of the things that we looked at, and we did review some of the things that we, I think Brian and the city have provided us some areas to look at. And I think our biggest issue is some of the areas were in close, you know, that Highway 99 corridor and Hazeldale. To the east of that, there isn't a lot of, it's all single family. But I don't think you'd get very much commercial because the proximity is not that great. And we have already some existing commercial land that's underdeveloped and underutilized in that area. And some of the proposals that were for us to consider wouldn't have made a difference in the modeling. Some areas that, churches or areas that are already built wouldn't have had a significant, they wouldn't have shown up in the model as additional capacity. So that's part of the reason we didn't go in that direction. What I can do is, see if I can go to a map here and show those areas.
Chair, if I could real quick while we're waiting, this illustrates a challenge that exists with commercial, with mixed use and, what we call like walkable 20-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute neighborhoods is, I live downtown and I watched the city for years. They've had mixed use requirements and largely, they would build these big block buildings and there would be commercial space underneath them and they would be empty. And it was a long time. It was like that. Those are starting to fill in now. But the hard subject about that is for, when the building was built, it's considerably more expensive to have that commercial space. So it increases the overall cost of the rent that needs to be charged to pay for the building to be built. But that's like kind of like the chicken before the egg type. If you don't have long-term goals in mind, you can end up with long-term inadequacies, I guess you would say. But it's always a challenge to look at that specific scenario. I think Highway 99 comes with its own specific challenges. So anyway, I had it on my list during council work session request to ask for a request for Highway 99 overlay later next year. But anyway, we'll get there later.
So I just wanted to give you some context for, so the areas that we proposed for expansion is this business park and general commercial. And this is 10th Avenue that runs north-south here, just north of 199th. So the capacity on the business park side was about 257 jobs. On the west, on the east side, where it's commercial, is roughly 1,080 jobs estimated. And then in the area east of WSU, this business park is the estimated capacity there is about 614 jobs. And just worked out that way, but it's the difference between these is essentially the capacity, the excess capacity that's shown in the alternative two of about 436, I think it's 436 jobs. between the changes that were made in Highway 99, the mixed use, and then sort of these.
There's some urban holding in that vicinity as well. Can you show that? And is there additional urban holding designations other places?
Not within the Vancouver UGA. We have removed all the urban holding. The last one was the 179.
Oh, and then there's this one,
No, this one is urban reserve.
Yeah,
We're just,
urban reserve. Okay,
There's no, yeah,
there's no urban holding.
Yeah.
great, thanks.
question.
Okay, are there questions or?
Yeah,
do we-
actually, now that you bring it up, what is the difference between urban reserve and urban holding?
Urban reserve is not within an urban growth area. Urban holding is brought into an urban growth area, and the
But
urban reserve is
reserve,
placed
okay.
on it
Yeah.
until
Okay. Thank you.
utilities are available.
And urban reserve is for future urban hold. No.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that
future-
would,
future
that
urban
would
is-
be
okay.
the logical next step after it's brought into an urban growth area. Usually the urban holding is placed on it, but it
Got it.
depends.
Thank you.
Chris, did you want to say something?
Oh, just that an urban reserve overlay does not obligate the county to do anything with that property at any particular time. It doesn't have to be the next property brought into an urban growth boundary or
So I would what is the purpose of it then? Is it just to let the property owners know that that's the potential upcoming plan? I mean, what is the purpose of?
well, potential upcoming plan. That sounds like a good description.
It is putting the property owners on notice that that is the likely areas that could be considered for inclusion in the urban growth boundary. If I may summarize quickly, I know that Bryant is joining us. My takeaway with this is that we started with the land capacity. We realized that we could accommodate the growth or the job numbers. When we started realizing that there's some areas like in the Highway 99 area that the model doesn't assign any capacity, and we know that, as you mentioned, Councilor Fontes, that Divine is coming there, that there is opportunity for different type of development occurring there, and the assumption and based on what we are seeing on the ground in terms of what is happening in mixed use, that when we started recognizing those, it reduces the capacity for jobs. That's why we were making these changes. And then we looked at what potential areas can we bring in, not for housing, but for jobs, land to make up that deficit that have been created now because of some of these changes. We did consider the proposal from the city to look at some other areas to minimize vehicle mile travel and other issues. And as Jose was indicating, we looked at some of those areas, they are already built. It doesn't mean we cannot apply commercial to those areas, but if you look at their proximity to areas that are predominantly designated as commercial, the chances of those areas developing at commercial is, very nil, if I may say so. If the council, particularly the area southeast of the Wazoo, because there is opposition for those that live out there that do not want that to be designated as BP. I hear them. I'm not, their desire would have been to give them R15 or R16. You wouldn't hear them objecting. They're just objecting to the BP. But the job numbers, as Jose indicated here, is relatively small. If you want that capacity to be allocated to, say, Vancouver, we are open to that. But we have to be able to find an adjustment to make sure that there is some good understanding to balance the job allocation in the unincorporated Vancouver UGA. But the other issue that the city also raised, which we have shared with council, is that the work from home assumption is a very conservative number. The information provided to us from Employment Security Department, given the information from American Community Surveys, like the work from home is close to 20% or so, but we know that, things may change. That's why we were very conservative. I'm not sure that the council wants to revisit the assumptions that you have already approved. So that is one of the issues that they're raising. But we are open to any suggestion from council. This map that Jose is showing here, we can show you other areas where we have proposed changes so that we have shared this with council. It may just be coming back now. We shared this with you when we shared with you the alternative 2 and alternative 3 that is being studied. So you can see here, I don't want Jose to go through each of them, but you can see areas that are currently designated as single family that we are proposing to upzone, and some other changes that we are suggesting here. Some of them are based on site-specific requests from some developers. We got a series of them from Gene. Don't want to name particular, but yeah, we had a series of them from Gene Development Corporation, and we are honoring some of those through this proposal in all too. So that is really why we made the changes that we made. And from that, I think the relative difference is very minor. We are open, not asking you for that decision now, but by the time we get to the preferred, we would like to see what direction the council will take if you decide that this BP area southeast of the Wazoo should be taken off based on opposition from the property owners.
I just have one question before we get back to that. When you said that there's single family land that is being upzoned, is that land that's vacant, that does not have any buildings on it currently?
Yeah, so most of that is in that the 179th Street area, north and south of the fairgrounds.
Okay, good. So it's not built, because
Right.
Yes.
once a single family house is there, it is
Yeah. And,
almost.
yeah, and I,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we were saying earlier, that not to criticize the city, but some of the areas that they want us to look at, already you have churches there, you have built single family, that saying those areas should go to commercial, we're not going to get anything until, I don't know whether that is going to change hand. That's why we didn't make those changes. And the proximity that they have to other established commercial areas, it will be very difficult for any commercial there to compete. That's one of the reasons we didn't make those changes.
Okay, thank you. Brian, thanks for joining us. It'd be good to get your perspective. We're not making a decision today, but good to hear your Vancouver's perspective.
Well, thank you very much for scheduling the work session. Thank you for also inviting me up here to speak. I'll respect the fact that it is a county work session and not ours, and be brief. Want to thank want to thank the county staff for walking through how we got to this point, and the math that they undertook maybe a year ago regarding the situation in the mixed use designations that created the new need for the additional employment expansions for the city. And we respect those decisions, that math decision, and aren't necessarily reversing it. We're saying the math has gotten us into a bad place where you have two expansion areas that don't provide, in the big picture of things, that many jobs, the one by WSU and then the other one by 199th. Both are heavily parcelized, both have a lot of critical lands. there are steps to avoid it, to justified steps in the math, that if you want to take, and we would not think that you would take it right here today, but perhaps you could provide some direction that going forward to the preferred alternative, that at least we collectively try to look at some of those steps. So we identified a couple in our letter. One was, which I think county staff mentioned today, that the work at home assumption is outdated and probably too conservative. Another we raised in our letter is that the mixed use assumption probably needs to be tweaked a little to reflect what is actually happening in the county on mixed use ground. So we do respect, if you don't want to change the assumptions, you could also change the target allocations, that there's a surplus under the county assumptions, not city assumptions, but under the county analysis. There's, as Oliver alluded to, there's a surplus of jobs land that could be, you could shift the target from a small portion of the target allocation, and this is in the letter, from the VUGA to the city of Vancouver. It wouldn't necessarily mean we'd end up getting more jobs over time, but it would create this sort of artificial math-driven need for these two expansion sites, which I think most folks agree aren't in ideal places. So that's what we're suggesting regarding those, is if you simply could provide direction that we collectively explore among the staffs ways of tweaking that, so that we don't have the need for expansion areas that are at least in one of the cases creating opposition, in both cases on land that's not very well suited, and it hasn't been supported by all but a few site specific requests will probably end up being candidates for rezone in the future. So that's the request there, just to provide that broad direction. The other issue is less a math-driven issue, and it's really wanting to provide. There's wide swaths of the VUGA that aren't near anything other than single family homes, and so we looked at a possible list of 17 sites, and I'd maybe disagree a little bit technically with my colleagues here on these sites are not particularly near Highway 99. They are mostly miles away. They're not particularly near I-5. They are mostly miles away. To the extent they are built, they might be, a 5-acre piece that has one house on it, a 10-acre piece that has one house on it. So they're, again, not looking to sort of try and micromanage that decision today, but if you could just provide some direction to at least explore if some of those sites would be useful for commercial, and they will never turn into, I don't think, in my judgment, walkable neighborhoods or a city or anything that looks in the city of Vancouver. It would just provide an opportunity for an older person to be able to drive to a nearby commercial that they can't do now without going 3 miles away. It would provide an opportunity for a teenager to be able to maybe work, somewhere. Again, they're probably going to drive there. Some may walk, but mostly driving still. But some of those opportunities that now folks have to go quite a ways away. So just having that option out there, I think is what we're hoping can happen. And we think it affects climate issues. It affects, compliance with countywide planning policies that say you should have uses a little closer to each other. So again, just if that's something that you could direct, we explore options, not for all 17 sites. Maybe, it's a small, I think as we've said, small steps could go a long way. And in our letter, we tried to sort of say, well, you do have a couple of large, 10, 20, 30 acre site specific requests for commercial upzones. Maybe they could incorporate, or maybe they could even be approached. We don't know, but to incorporate a small portion of that as a commercial portion that could serve not just that development, but the surrounding single family area that right now doesn't have things particularly near to it. So those are the two requests that we have for you. And again, our sincere thanks for both scheduling the work session and allowing me to be here.
Thank you. Oliver, would you like to, or Jose, did you have any comments to respond?
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity for the city to raise some of these concerns. I will tell you that we have reviewed them, and I believe when we first saw the letter, we did respond and provided the same explanation as to why we went the route that we did, and that makes perfect sense. And two, that only the council can revisit the assumptions again, and we at staff level, we're not going to do so. We are open to suggestion. I mentioned earlier that if you take out this southeast area near Wazoo, because of the opposition, I agree that some of those areas are parcelized and have some environmental constraint. There is no area in the county that doesn't have environmental constraint at all. It's not parcelized. I think the opposition, as I said, this is very similar to the opposition that we faced or the council faced when we were having some employment land north of the fairgrounds or even in the fairgrounds area. Folks were here raising opposition. Their position is, if you make us residential, we will come in. That is really what is here. And the city would not disagree that the changes that we made was as a result of what we are seeing on the ground relative to mixed use. I have said this multiple times. The type of mixed use you find in, let's say, in downtown Vancouver, we don't see that in the suburban environment outside of the city. What you're seeing is horizontal mixed use. And as my staff here have indicated, what we have seen is even at the 80-20, we have gone also to deep. What we are seeing is that the first 80% of that land will develop as residential. The very small silver that is left, those that live on the single family will come opposing that commercial being next to them, and then the developers will come make it all residential. That's what we are seeing. You don't get that. So with that experience, we made some of this adjustment to account for the job numbers that we no longer have. If we didn't make those changes, we could meet the job allocated to the unincorporated Vancouver UGA. So we are open to any suggestion that we may have in the future. I am putting on the table that I don't think it's appropriate to revisit the assumptions, because you cannot just do the work from home without impacting others. But be that as it may, this is an ask. I've said it before, we can not only bring in the city of Vancouver at the table, but when we talk to the other jurisdiction, there may be some other jurisdiction that have maybe a higher capacity, or maybe it doesn't have that. If they have more capacity, can they give that to the city of Vancouver? Because I can share with you, and I have commented on that on their DEIS and the two land use that they studied in their own DEIS, that they have more capacity than was allocated to them. And my comment to them in their DEIS is that you have to find a way by the time you get to your preferred, because we have a county control number. We're not going to exceed that, regardless of what assumptions that you made, whether that will hold or not. You still have to remain within what was allocated to you. But if you're showing that you have the capacity, we have to make some adjustment somewhere else so that we maintain that county control numbers. I'm just putting it out here. It's not something that we should ignore. And you don't want to revisit because Vancouver has more capacity. You don't want to go up now and say, okay, we're going to change the population that you've already made a decision on. So there's so many things that are on the table. But when we say, yeah, let's begin to make adjustment here and there. And I've shared this with my colleague here that this is not that simple as it may look.
I don't think this is going to get resolved today. I'm thinking that we understand the issue, and that I'm noting the time because we're going to reconvene at 1 for council time, and we need to have a break. So just in terms, I don't know if we have time to really even provide
So Chair,
direction. help me out.
No, I was just going to clarify the purpose of this work session. I believe it was Counselor Young who asked for it, just to ask staff the reasoning behind the decision. So it was not to have a deliberation or anything on changes on anything. It was really just to provide the logic behind that decision in the comp plan update.
Okay, then I would just ask if anyone has a question related to understanding the logic behind the decision.
I don't have any well, I do have actually some questions for Brian, but where I just kind of would like to determine at this point, like, where are we moving with this? Because I personally, I know we're not making any decisions today, but I would like to look at this a little bit more. I agree with our staff on how they've run the numbers for Highway 99. I think that is correct. Highway 99 is what it is. I think we could possibly make some changes in the future, but we need to base it on what is really happening. I think that's the most important part, is actually plan to what is really going to happen. But I am interested in some of the ideas for where we would place that growth, and some of those site-specific requests that we had studied. But that was one of my questions for Oliver and Brian, both of you, is I don't know if some of those properties that you were suggesting, are they properties that were not studied in the DEIS?
Well, I think there's two issues and two requests, I think. On the first request, which is to eliminate the two, in our view, inappropriately located employment expansions, those don't require, one way you could do that is simply changing the target sub allocation between the city of Vancouver and the Vancouver UGA. It would
Right.
not require,
Okay.
it wouldn't upset the apple cart. It wouldn't require other jurisdictions to do something. It wouldn't require your countywide total to change for jobs. It would just require changing the VUGA number and the city number, the target. And you wouldn't even have to get into the vacant lands assumptions if you wanted to take
Yeah,
that
the
approach.
vacant buildable, the VBLM, I mean, I've been this every time there's been pressure to reopen that, and I'm the same opinion. I don't want to go that route
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay, I'm gonna have to cut
Sure.
this off.
So can
We've
we?
just run out of time.
Yes.
I think you can reach out individually. I think ultimately we will be coming up with a preferred alternative. This will be part of the discussion for that. I don't know a subsequent time that we have this year to further discuss this as a council. I think things have been clarified but not resolved. So I'm thinking this will be part of what we're wrestling with when we come up with a preferred alternative. But I thank you all very much. I'm sorry if this has been frustrating for any or all of you. But I would just like to go ahead and adjourn this work session so we can have a break before council time. So thank you very much.